Our second reading is from Romans chapter 8, verses 18 through 25. Listen now to God's word. I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory about to be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the children of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not of its own will, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to decay, will obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning in labor pains until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly while we await for adoption, the redemption of our bodies. For in hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope. For who hopes for what is seen? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. This is the word of the Lord. I couldn't wait to get my first car. I didn't have a car in high school, and when I went to college, I lived on campus, so a car wasn't really a necessity, at least in my parents' minds. I knew that when I got a car, my life would improve dramatically. I would have it made. There would be no more bumming rides, no more chipping in for gas, no more depending on other people's schedules. But I didn't have a car. My senior year of college, I got an off-campus job, and so a car did become a necessity. My first car was a 1973 light green Datsun 510 with straight shift and no air conditioning. It was the cheapest car you could buy that time. It was a wonderful car, except for the lack of air conditioning in the South Carolina summer weather. It didn't do much to improve my dating life. I guess it was all that sweating. Well, after a while, I did notice my social life didn't improve all that much. It wasn't fancy enough or cool enough to impress dates. It costs a lot of money to keep up a car. Did you know that? I thought it was going to change my life, but in the end, it was just a car. I had spent so much time and energy dreaming about that car, waiting impatiently for that car, that there was no way that the reality of owning a car was ever going to meet my expectations. I look back over the various moments in our lives when we long for certain things: a new job, a place on the team, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a house, a family, the birth of a child, a vacation home, early retirement, a soldier to come home from overseas, the outcome of medical tests or surgery, some particular problem we trouble over, waiting for a child to do well in school. We wait for important things, meaningful things, deep things, but we can easily get frustrated and impatient as we wait. I've also noticed how over the years we spend an awful lot of time waiting for things that really aren't going to make that much difference in our lives. And when we finally get the object of our desire, we discover, well, this is it. When we achieve our dreams, we always seem to want something more, waiting for another thing. But God has made us so that no matter what we gain, no matter what we achieve, we are never satisfied. We're always longing for that next thing, because at the bottom of all our longings is our longing for God. And that is the way God has made us. In the 37th Psalm, we heard this morning how an older King David is ruminating about how to handle the evil schemes of those who plot against him. In his anxiety, he turns again and again to his confident faith in God. He knows that God will uphold the righteous and bring down the proud and the evil. Father Richard Rohr once said at a conference, "You can endure and absorb the painful mystery of things if you know that you're upheld by the unconditional love." David knew the steadfast love of the Lord. He knew that his life was in God's hands, and yet he was troubled, waiting impatiently for God to act. I really think David was talking to himself when he said, "Commit your way to the Lord and trust in him, and he will act. The Lord will make your vindication shine like the light, and the justice of your cause like noonday. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. And do not fret over those who prosper in their way, over those who carry out evil desires. Refrain from anger, forsake wrath. Do not fret. It only leads to evil." David longs for this God of steadfast love to act, and he knows as he waits that his life is in God's hands. And this is the only truth that can give him the patience he needs to wait for his time of vindication. Waiting in hope. Paul, in the 8th chapter of Romans, talks about the deep longings of the human heart, our waiting for God. And these deep longings arise from the contrast between the way things are in the present, the sufferings of this present time, and the glory, the future glory that is about to be revealed to us, the plan of God for all creation. I find it great comfort to know that the great figures of the Scriptures were not immune to human suffering. Paul knew all about pain and disappointment and heartbreak. I shared with you several weeks ago about how in 2 Corinthians, Paul speaks about all that he endures for the sake of the gospel: flogging and imprisonment and shipwreck and hunger and betrayal and cold and thirst and stoning and sleeplessness. Disappointed by his friends, worried about the congregations he has established. He faces constant controversy and criticism. And Paul, to top it off, has a thorn in the flesh, a vexing physical problem. But in spite of all these things, Paul says that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing to the glory to be revealed to us. He does not deny suffering. No, he looks suffering squarely in the face and says, in fact, out of the suffering, the agony of this present time, a new world is being born. And more than that, Paul says, not only are we as the human creature engaged in this waiting and longing, the whole creation is longing together. The creation itself knows what it is to suffer, and the creation itself knows what it is to hope for that which is not yet seen. I love the paraphrase of Paul's words in J.B. Phillips' rendering of this verse. Paul says that we wait with eager longing, and J.B. Phillips puts it this way: the creation stands on tiptoes in order to see God's future. And he captures the spirit of the very word that Paul uses to describe this eager longing. It is a person standing tall with the head absolutely erect, eyes gazed out on the horizon to be the very first to catch the glimpse of the marvelous thing that God is doing. What I love about Paul's words is that it reminds us that we are bound together with the creation in our suffering, but bound together in our hope as well. The creature and the creation are in bondage to decay, but together we will be set free by God to receive the redemption that God has planned. And God's redemption touches every aspect of life, every flowering plant and rushing stream, musical note and distant star is holding its breath in anticipation of a new world being born. Every tiny baby, every hungry villager, every endangered bird, wounded soldier, spotted leopard, bombed out city, lonely soul, and cornflower in bloom in an Indiana field is caught up in this cosmic longing for redemption, a redemption that Paul describes as a new birth. For we are together with the world in labor pains for a new world to be born. And the Spirit is moving and shaping and in all things, bringing about the glorious future that God has planned. And the sighs and the groans and even the unspoken anguish in our hearts are the signs of the work of the Spirit of God in us, longing for that which is yet to be, pointing us to God's future, which we cannot yet see. For Paul says, if we hope for what we do see, that is not hope. But we hope for what we do not yet see, and we wait for it with patience. And that too is the work of the Spirit, taking away our anxious hearts, transforming our impatient spirits. And this is why Paul speaks in Galatians 5 of patience as one of the fruit of the Spirit. We wait in patience. We hope for what we do not yet see. We wait with eager longing because everything, including ourselves in this present world and even in the church, is not yet as it should be. And everything is not as it is going to be. Anyone who waits beside the bed of a sick child knows how hard it is to wait with patience for healing to come. Anyone who grieves over the violent deaths of students on our campuses in this country and in our cities knows how it is to wait with patience, how hard it is to wait on some solution to violence. Anyone who prays for the resolution of the conflicts in the Middle East, the persecution of people of different faiths, and for the migration of hundreds of thousands of people know how hard it is to wait in patience for God to show us the way. Anyone who grieves over the despoiling of land and sea and air knows how hard it is to wait in patience for the new creation. The theologian Paul Tillich said that waiting means not having and having at the same time. He says we don't possess God, and if we think we do, it's just an idol of our own making that we are worshiping. God is always out there in front of us, drawing us, pulling us into the future, and our longing for God reminds us of how much we do not yet possess. And yet, Tillich says, waiting can also be a kind of having. He writes, if we wait in hope and patience, the power of that for which we wait is already effective within us. He who waits in absolute seriousness is already grasped by that for which he waits. He who waits in patience has already received the power of that for which he waits. And so we wait in patience. I had a hard time thinking about writing this sermon because, as some of you might have suspected, I'm not a very patient person. I always want the next thing to happen. I want a solution to the problem. I want to help a group move forward. I just want to understand the answer, and so I become very impatient. I wondered how I would preach today on patience. When I was a child, I used to love to ride my bicycle over to my grandparents' home. In those days, you could kind of ride anywhere you wanted, and I would get on that little bike and pedal away. They only lived about 9 blocks away, and I would go to my grandparents' home, and more often than not, my grandfather would be sitting in the living room in his favorite chair reading the Wall Street Journal. And I would come in and I'd rush to the cabinet and get out the Chinese checkers game, and I would bring it over to my grandfather in hopes that he would play Chinese checkers with me. And you know what? He would put down that newspaper. He would set up the Chinese checkers board on the little stool in front of his chair, and he would play with me for what seemed like hours. Never frustrated, never disquiet, never impatient, for he was an everyday disciple of Jesus. He acted as if he had nothing more important in the world to do than play Chinese checkers with me. And when I find myself caught up in moments of great impatience, when I'm not getting the answer that I want to the problem, when I'm not able to move forward with an idea, I think about my grandfather. And that chair, which sat in his living room, is now in our study. And so when I find myself particularly impatient about something or someone, I go and put myself in a kind of spiritual and mental timeout. I sit myself down in that chair and I wait. I wait. Patience comes as a gift of God for those who wait upon the Lord. And even though I cannot see the outcome of that for which I wait, I seek, as David said, to be still before the Lord and to wait patiently for God. Amen.